All right, we're gonna start by drawing our pears in pencil. Because it's difficult for you to see the pencil when I write on it in a video, I'm gonna go over the shape of the pears in marker for you. First, I'm gonna do just the pear shapes. So this pear, let's make a nice little round top for it. So it's got a big round top. And then I'm gonna start there and kind of come out wider. Maybe we're a little bumpy over the bottom. And I'm gonna come up and meet the neck there. This pear is falling over. It's a little bit lopsided. Yours can be just perfect like this if you want, but mine is very lopsided. So first I wanted to fill in this space here. And when I get here, it can be a little lumpy bumpy. And then we're gonna come inward and curve over for the top of that pear. And I know when you look at these, they're not perfectly pear-shaped. That's okay. There's no perfect pears. They're all shaped differently. Then we're gonna add our little stem, and I'm gonna make it kind of thick because I know that I wanna paint it with watercolor. And this one is gonna also get a little stem. And the way I'm gonna make these leaves is a little different than the way I usually do. I'm gonna start at the stem and I'm gonna make sort of a wavy line that goes out. Then I'm gonna start at the tip here and make kind of just an oddly wavy line like that. And then I'll do one on the other side that's similar. And if it's a little jaggedy, that's okay. But there's our little curly leaf on our pear. And I'll add one here too. So this one's just kind of a loosey-goosey line. And then we'll start there and have our little leafy line comes there. Now on this pear, I did make it overlap a little bit onto the pear because I thought, well, you know, let's do some extra special effects. If you don't want to do that, it's all right. You don't have to. So here I'm going to give this leaf its little middle, and then I'll add the outside parts to it. And it doesn't have to be symmetrical. This might be a leaf that's a little bit withered on our pear. And then the last one over here, I'm going to bring a little bit downward because that's where I have room on my paper. And I'm going to do the same thing I just did, where we just kind of come up and over. So that's what we're going to paint. Ta-da! That's how you do it. And here's mine. What I am going to do, this pear is going to be green and yellow. This pear is going to be kind of red and yellow on mine. And if you did draw over the boundary of your pear, it's a good idea to just erase that one little line. Alrighty, let's get started with paint. So I have my, let me back out just a little bit for you here. I have my 8-color watercolor palette. So these are the only colors I'm working with: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, brown, and black. I'm not going to do a lot of mixing like over in a palette this time. I know I do that sometimes, but I thought, you know, I'm going to challenge myself and I'm going to see if maybe I don't need to do that. So step one, I'm going to paint this pear only with water. What I'm going to do is leave a little bitty space kind of right here that is not painted, and I'm going to do the same on this pear because that's kind of our little glare areas on our pear. So I can decide if I want to leave that open for real or if I want to paint right over it. But for now, I'm going to leave it open. I'm starting with this pear and I'm painting it just full of water. The reason I like to do this instead of going right in with my paint is because if we paint straight on the paper, that paint really likes to go saturate the paper and it's harder to keep it up in the watery part and blend it with the other colors. So I'm going to go around my glare with water, and I'm sort of just setting the boundary for where my paints will go. as I paint this little pear in with water. Which color did I say? Was this going to be the green and yellow one? I don't remember. All right. So this is the lightest part of the pear, right here where we've put our glare. That's the lightest part. I'm going to start there first. So I'm going to start there with yellow. And I'm going to run some yellow around these little glares between them. So we have those two little spaces left. And hopefully all around we have plenty of water where this yellow paint can go. I'm just loosely going to add some yellow. I don't want it to be too dark. I'm okay with it being a very, very light yellow. And I'm going to sweep it in and around to these other little areas of my pear. But I'm keeping most of the color of the yellow right here. So let's just sweep it all around. So we're running it on through there. So now I have a light yellow pear. Well, I want to add some green. So I'm going to get my green wet. But I'm not going to start over here where I started with the yellow. I'm going to start on this other side where my pear is going to be much more green. And I'm going to slowly bring my green over to meet with the yellow. So I'm bringing my green about halfway. I do want to cover all the yellow I have over here. Excuse me. So I can go back and get some green. I want this side to be a little darker and that middle section to be a little bit lighter. So I'm going to pull this down through the center. Have some little dots. We can have little dots of green over here. Whoops. I ran outside my boundary, so I now need to create a new boundary. All right, so what I'm going to do is go back and forth. So I'm going to put some yellow here through the middle, just some dots. And I'm going to see what it does with that green. I'm not mixing purposefully. I'm simply dotting this yellow throughout the green, letting it do what it's going to do. I'm trying to get my colors to be friends. Now, what's happening is my paper is a little curly, so I can turn it. I can ask that paint, excuse me, could you please slide down the page? So that's what I had to do there. All right, I'm going to add a little more yellow as we're moving over into this side. And you can play with this paint. You can mix it however you want to. If you want to try adding another color in there, you can. You could add brown. You could add some orange over on this side. Maybe I'll add a little tiny bit of brown to this bottom edge. This pear might have some brown tones in it. And they're going to slowly mix in through the center with that yellow and the other green that we have there. I'm just asking them to slowly mix together. Nothing too fancy, nothing too crazy, nothing too bold. We're just slowly asking them to mix up just a little in the middle. And if these paints do not blend all the way and we have a little bit of that spotted mottled look, I'm okay with that, because in real life it's kind of what pears look like. They have a lot of different colors on them. They're not all just one color. Some of them are greener. Some of them have different colors. Get a little more of that brown and come over to this side and just add it here and there throughout to give my pear some shade, some little spots. There is a brush hair that is really needs to be plucked. And I can dot that brown around my green edge. But I just want you to play with this paint and let your pear be the color that you would like it to be. And that will develop as you add more and more of the brown and green as they mix, as they kind of become a different color together. I think the number one thing to know about watercolor is that it's so helpful if we can be patient. If we can be patient, work very slowly, and let those paints slowly melt together in the way that we know they will if we just let them. It gives us such a lovely, lovely look at the end. You can always come in, you can add more green, you can add more brown, you can add more yellow, you can add more water, which is what I'm going to do over here because this is starting to dry out a little bit and I might want to put some more paint to blend it all together. So I'm going to get it a little bit wet. I think I'm going to put a little tiny bit of orange over on that side. Not a lot, but just a little. Just getting a very little for the start. Because I want to see what it'll do if I add orange along this boundary. It's kind of interesting. I don't hate it. It's kind of brightening it up. I might put some more yellow in there. But I want to make it a slow transition over to that green. There we go. And I think I'm going to get a little more yellow. Maybe a lot more yellow. And keep adding that. I like the way the yellow brightens up the color that I'm working with here. It's giving me that pear color that I really want to see as it mixes with that olive green that we made with the green and the brown. Oh, that's really starting to look like pear color. I know some people don't like playing in the paint quite as much as I do. You just want to paint it a color and you want to be done. And that's all right. But I invite you to try this way and really have some fun adding a little bitty bit at a time and watching each tiny paint you add just bloom into that paint that's already there. That to me is the beauty of working with watercolor. It's what I like about it the most. And again, sometimes these get a little bit dried. So I'm going to bring some more water in and make sure that we're keeping all of that over there. I feel like this is getting a little translucent. So I'm going to bring in some more green and just dot it throughout. And let this all build very, very slowly. I want some dark and some light. And I definitely want this green to get broken up by some yellow, some of that yellow green, and a little bit of the brown pigment that I've put down. So we can sort of keep crossing over until we feel like we're done. And I'm going to take some of that liquid and put it over here. You can steal from different parts of your painting and go put them on another part. That's absolutely fine. And I feel like I might want just a tiny baby bit of green over here. So maybe I'll pick up some of this green and head over to this edge. So I can green it up just a tiny bit. It's still mostly yellow over there. But I'm bringing in some green. And we still have our lovely yellow over here on our bright spot. And if we want to remove any paint, we can just dry out. I have a regular towel, but you can use a napkin or a paper towel. So I can dry out my brush and I can vacuum up a little bit of paint. I can make it a little bit brighter through here by lifting the paint that I've added to this page. So sometimes we use our brush to apply paint, And we can also use our brush to take paint away. I like to call that the paint vacuum, because that's more fun than saying lifting, right? All right, so then we can kind of, that's light and lovely. And if you want to, you can pick your paper up and you can let that paint run down and around. I'm going to let a lot of this liquid run to the darker part of my pear. You just want to be careful that it doesn't run out of your pear. That's the only danger. So you have to take a little gamble and then send it back toward the center. Then we have that nice round feel that we were going for. And there's our green pear. Now we can start working on our red pear. And for this one, I'm going to use like reds and purples and yellows and oranges. But I'm going to do the same thing as I did before. I'm going to paint the body of the pear just with water. If you're having trouble seeing where you painted with water, you could always just add a little bit of yellow to this. And I'm going to do the same thing I did before, where I don't paint the white glare. I'm just going to paint around it. But I'm going to set my outer boundary of this pear with water. And I'm going to make, on this pear, the dark side of my other pear is facing the outside of the paper, the part that's not quite as ripe. I'm going to have this pear's ripe space also be kind of in the middle, like the nice sweet ripe pear part of either of these pears is facing its little pear friend. How about that? I think that'll be cute. We can still have this glare over here on the darker side of the pear. That's okay. That's just where the light is hitting. That doesn't have anything to do with how ripe the pear is or anything like that. So I'm starting with yellow over here on this edge. So this is the part of my pear that's going to be a little bit brighter. And I'm just going to sweep it toward the center. Sweepy, sweepy, sweep. Sweeping toward that middle. I'm just using the very tippy tip of this brush to sweep it toward the center. And then I'm coming up and around. And I kind of want to hide my pencil lines a little bit. So I'm making sure that I get to those. The back edge of this pear is going to have some red in it. So I'm coming around this back edge with my red. And you already know what color this is going to make when it mixes with the yellow, probably. So I'm going to continue to add that red. Just go right by that little glare that we added. And sweep it out to this yellow, kind of like we did with the green over there. I'm going to sweep on down. The top of this pear can be red. So it's still reddish orange here. Still through there. And down the other side of that line that shows our glare. And I'm slowly going to get these two colors to be friendly through the center here. And then I can keep adding a little more, just like we did on the green. So that's getting really fun. I'm going to add a little more red down here. I want that to be a little bit darker. And I'll slowly add just a little bit over here as we get into that yellow. I'm going to make it, it's almost like it's spotted. Then I'm going to get just water on my brush and encourage these colors to mingle. Because you guessed it, we're going to add maybe a little bit of brown to this. And I think over on the other side, we even can add a little bit of purple to get that true, just that very ripe, very red pear look that we want. So I'm going to start again over here though with red because I still want more, a little more red on this edge. Nice bright red coming through. It's too pink through here. I don't want that pink. I want it to be nice and red. So I'm going to continue to add some and dot it here and there. And I'm getting just a tiny bit of paint on my brush each time, if you haven't noticed. And the reason I'm doing that is I don't want to overboard. I don't want to go overboard. I want the right amount, just the right amount to be in there. So, and I'm applying it. So well, that's fixable. Ooh, that's good. Okay, so I'm applying it to the places where the red is already kind of dark. And I'm asking it to sort of just slowly mix with the yellow that's already there. And if I need to bring some more water in so that it mixes gently, I can do that. I'm trying to preserve this nice little yellow spot over here though. I don't want to totally run over all of that. You may be painting much more quickly than me, and that's all right. I tend to be a pretty slow painter. That's how I roll. So now I'm going to get in my purple. And this may seem a little odd. Whoa, that was purple and brown. First, I'm going to go in purple. Maybe we'll go in brown here in a little bit. And the purple is just going to go right along this very, very edge. And then we will ask it to mix a little bit more. So that's where our purple is going. Now I'm going to rinse out my brush and I'll ask that purple and red to see what they might do if they get together here. I'm going to make some little circular motions. I'm trying to mix the purple into the red area, but I'm also trying to mix the red into the purple area, if that makes sense to everyone. I want this darkness over here, this ripeness, this variation, and a little bit of it can come over too. The name of the game here for me is just getting it to all be very simply blendy. So then I can bring in some of this brown, and that's going to take those bright colors down a notch. But what it's going to do is give us that more natural earthy tone to the colors we've put in here. So we can dab this mixture all around. And I'm still trying to leave this one spot here nice and bright and golden. But our other colors are closing in. They're getting there. And it can be hard when your paper warps up a little bit like this, because your paint all wants to go to one place. So we might have to pick up the paper and ask our paint to move around. But we want to make sure that one doesn't move around too much. I'm enjoying the way this is getting a little bit dark. I'm going to add some more purple over here. See what happens. And then I'll add a little more of that brown as well. And it's just like last time. I'm trying to move the purple over here where I have some red. But then I also want to move some of the red over here so it warms up that purple. What I'm mostly trying to do is keep the purple away from that big, beautiful golden spot that we've made. Boy, this paint really wants to pool right there, doesn't it? All right, but I love the way this edge is looking with the red and the purple. That is nice. So maybe I'll add a little more yellow just through this part here to get these all looking like they belong together. And And we can kind of, as you go through this, you had yellow in your brush, but as you go through this, you're picking up a lot of other color, which is fine because pears can be several different colors. And I absolutely love this. This is turning out so nicely. Now I have some yellow that's trying to infiltrate the darker part up here, so I'm going to try to bring that around a little bit. And I'm not going to go paint that leaf. I am not painting that leaf until this is all the way dry. So I'm going to add a little bit of the orangey and the brown to the edge here. And then I think I can pick this up and I'm going to sort of bend my paper to where the paint in this pear travels toward the center of the pear. And I can go back and forth both ways. I can rotate, whatever I want to do to kind of move the liquid around on this. Get those colors melting together, looking absolutely lovely. And this can help the paint to dry a little more quickly too, because we're running it over areas that are drier than where it originally was. So it helps it to blend and it helps it to dry. Wow, those colors are great. All right, so these are the two colors of my pears. But now I am flipping this over because I'm going to work on these leaves. They're going to be, I think the leaves, the first color that I'll put on the leaves is going to be brown, but I'm going to do my thing where I add some water first. Wouldn't it be fun if the leaves on the green pear were reddish brown and the leaves on the red pear were greenish brown? Maybe I'll do that. So there's one pear. And I'm going to start with brown. So I'm just going to add brown. That might have been too much brown, but time will tell. All right, so I'm going to fill in this base of this leaf, this brown color that I have here. And the reason I went to this step next is because it's not touching the actual pear. So it's very convenient for us to just do this one. And it's very watered down brown. You can see that. It's pretty watery. So I'm going to wipe my brush off and I'm going to lift a little bit of that brown liquid. Dry my brush out and lift a little bit more of it. Then, let's see, I'm going to go into my orange. So I'm going to add a little orange to each tip, maybe some to the sides of this leaf. Rinse my brush. I don't want a lot of water, but I want a nice clear brush to just dab this orange along the outside of the leaf. So just play with the colors inside the leaf however you would like to. Maybe I'll add some yellow. That would be great. Maybe I'll add yellow to one edge, but not to the whole edge. And then I'll add a little tiny bit of brown. So I don't want a lot of brown in my brush because I already did that and had to remove some of it. So a little bit of brown. And then maybe a tiny bit of red. So not a lot of red, but a good little bit of red. And I'm going to add that here to this little edge of my leaf. And we can see how it's getting a little bit darker. So that's nice because it is, like I said, it's covering up my pencil. And we can do the tilty thing where we ask our paint to go different places. And then I'm going to add a little bit more brown just to one edge. And see what happens as that brown travels across the leaf, across the paper, kind of how this ends up being. We can come back later and put a little more detailing on that leaf. I'll do the same thing over here. So I'm going to paint it with water just water. And I will go in first. Let's see, do I want to do it the same way? I'll do it the same way. I'll go in first with a tiny bit of brown, just so we can get a color on there before we start playing with our other colors. Minding the boundary that we've set. I would rather go over the pencil line a little bit than not far enough, so that I'm able to cover up that pencil line. It doesn't really matter if it keeps showing, but sometimes it's nice to be able to have it just blend in with your paint. So that's what I'm aiming to do here. All right, so I'm going to put a little more brown in this one. This doesn't look precisely exactly like the other one. That's all right. So there's some brown in it, and then I'll add, what did we add? Yellow? I'll add some yellow here at this edge, maybe downward. Ooh, that's pretty. And then a little red toward the other edge. So I'll grab a tiny bit of red just on the tip of my brush, and I'll add it along this upper edge. And I'll let those all sort of just blend in together. And we'll see what happens. It's looking pretty nice. If there's a part that you want to be lighter, again, you can dry your brush out really good and just sweep over and get rid of some of that paint. So I can just sweep right over. And then we have a lighter spot. This one needs to dry a little bit more probably before I do any lifting, but let's try. All right. So I'm lifting a little bit here just to make it a little brighter through the middle. All right. This paint may come back and fill it in, we'll see. But I'm lifting, I'm just getting a little bit of a brighter spot there. Then I'm going to go paint the leaves on this pear. And I need to make sure this is very dry before I do that, and I know that it isn't. So I'm going to grab my little hair dryer and try to dry just that edge. I don't want to push this paint around at all. So let me do my hair dryer, do a little time travel, and I'll be right back. All right, I think we're good to go. That should be nice and dry. And my leaves up here are still wet, so I can still do a little of that. Asking my paint to go dance around if I want it to. All right, so these, let's make sort of like a greenish brown, I guess. A yellowish. So I'm gonna add some water, and this will be a good way to know if we got dry enough down here, because if we didn't, we're gonna know right away. And I'm going to try not to paint directly really close to that part of the apple right now. Once this edge dries a little, I can just push some of that paint over there. So let's see. I think we're doing all right here. I'm going to start with, I think I'll start with green. This time, instead of starting with brown, because I do want to make sure that we have these lovely complementary colors happening here. I don't think our green is gonna bust into the apple over there. If it does, you know, we'll deal with that if the situation arises. Maybe it won't. Maybe we won't have to deal with it. Maybe it will, and we will have to deal with it. But I know that we can handle it if it happens. I'm adding just the tiniest bit of paint at a time. I don't want too much paint, but I definitely want enough to get some nice color. All right, so there's some green. I'm going to add a little bit of yellow to it, just like we did on the others right there at the stem, and dot around. Get that yellow greenish look going. That is so pretty. Oh, I really like that. And down here at the bottom, I'm going to add a little bit of blue because that's really going to set it apart from the colors in the pear. So we can add some blue, and it's just going to mix to make like a blue-green, so it's not like we're going outside the realm of nature here. We just want it to have a little bit more depth, a little bit more darkness. And then we can maybe add just a smidgy touch of brown. Oh, that's too much brown. Just a little bitty bit of brown, maybe just along this edge. There we go. And we'll sweep the blue and the yellow green all together so that it joins with that brown. And we have a lot of interesting different colors in that leaf, don't we? I feel like we need just a little baby bit more yellow. Maybe up along this edge, we'll add that yellow. This is my favorite leaf so far. What I don't want to happen, I see a lot of water pooling here, and I don't want that going into my pear, so I'm going to ever so gently ask it to perhaps head back this way. You've not been invited to join the pear. So then we got to do a little bit of this number. Swish that paint around. And we're mixing it, and we're also keeping it out of the pear. So I feel a little better about that. Then we've got this leaf to go. So guess what? Painting it with some water. 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 How did we start this one? We started with green over here, right? Okay, so I'm going to start with green. All right, there's our green. There's a lot of water on this little tiny leaf. All right, green. Getting into the water. That is too much water. I gotta get rid of some of that. If you feel like you're just mixing the paint around in some soup, you can get rid of some of that water because that's a lot. Okay, now let's put some green down in there. Perfect. So green and yellow, a little bit of yellow right at the top. So where we did our yellow in the other one. Then what did we do? We did a little bit of blue. And I'm babysitting this. I'm watching it closely because I just don't want all that paint going into the pear. All right, the blue is going to go down here at the edge. This leaf is kind of tiny. Then I'll get just a little bitty bit of brown. Just a little, dipping just our little baby toe in the brown. And then we can kind of mix these together. And that brown and that yellow, we can bring it down into that blue to make sure that we get it turning kind of a green color. We don't want it to actually stay blue, but we can have those lovely blue undertones in a leafy color. Absolutely we can. So we've made a lot of different fun colors just from our 8-color palette. You don't need all those fancy colors if you're just willing to take a little time and work with what you've got. All right, I'm going a little overboard here, and I need to stop. Let's pick up a little bit of this color out of there and bring it into here. We can always share from one part of our painting to another. And like here, this paint is really making me nervous. So I'm going to take some of it away and I'll add it over here. So what do we have left to do? We need to do our stems. And they're just going to be good old-fashioned brown, I think. What do you think? I'm going to just go brown on these. But I'm going to do a light brown, like a nice light brown, and I'll add some yellow or some black to it. So I'm going to paint in my stem as I've drawn it. just with brown. And that just looks lovely, doesn't it? Perfect. And I think what I'm going to do is dab. Should we do purple? I'm going to try and dab just the tiniest bit of purple up one side here to make it a little bit darker. I've got a hair sticking out of this brush and it is really not my favorite thing. Gosh. So then maybe I need more brown. More brown, and I'm just going to dot it into that purple. Ooh, I had a little water on my brush there. And there's our little stem. And probably when I do this stem, I'll start with my water and a little bit of brown. And I'll add this stem here. I can sort of erase some of that pinkish that I have in there where I had a little spritz accident. But that's all right. And I'm gonna add some brown to it, like before, and the other one. And then I can take a little bit of that away if I need to. There we go. And then on this one, I'm gonna use the green on the stem because we used kind of a little of the purple there. So I'll use a little of the green on one edge of the stem here. And blendy, blendy, blend. Oh, that's it. That's the one string I need to pull off there. And then I'll add a little more brown just to finish it off and give it that nice natural brown look. All right, so there's one thing we haven't done, and that's this little teeny tiny branch where the leaf goes to the stem. And I am using whatever colors on my brush right now, and I'm going to make it really, really simple and super thin. If you're not comfortable doing this with your paintbrush, that is okay. You don't have to. You can do it like just with your pencil. But I'm going to take it all the way through, kind of like that. And I don't like how dark this is, so I'm going to see if I can lighten it a little bit. Yeah. So I just got my brush really dry, and I'm scooting it over. There we go. I can do that over here too. I can just scoot it over. Now these are wet, so I'm not going to go into the really wet part of my leaf with this. I'm just going to add a little sprig here to connect it, and that's going to be the end of that story. There we go. All right, so now I'm going to turn them right side up. I love the way these turned out. They're so cute. You could always do a background. You could always do speckles. I definitely think that pears need speckles because they're a speckled fruit. What I'm going to do is make a little umbrella for my highlights that I have here, because if I do not, my highlights will get speckles on them, and that's not what I want. I'm just tearing up little tiny bits of the paper towel, and I'm going to try to just cover. If you laugh, you might blow them off, so maybe like I need to stop talking, or I just need to whisper while I'm doing this. So I'm going to make a little raincoat for my shiny parts of my pears. I'm just going to tear it whatever feels like the right shape, so that if we speckle, we don't run over these lovely little highlights that we worked so hard to put down. All right, because those are just reflecty. They're not actual pear color. All right, so definitely I'm speckling with a little bit of brown, and I want to make sure it's watered down. I don't want it to be super thick, so I'm running it through the paint, and then I'm gonna tap it a little bit. All right, for speckling, I'm gonna hold my brush up pretty high, tap with my finger, and that's how we get some speckles. Love it. All right, I'm gonna speckle also, perhaps with a bit of yellow. So I'm getting some yellow in my brush, but then I don't want my brush to be absolutely full of yellow paint. So then I'm gonna speckle on down. It's nice to aim at a place that's not right directly on the pear with your first speckles. That way, if they're like huge or just not what you were expecting, you have not just gone straight onto your pear. I love the yellow speckles on these pears. This is gorgeous. All right, so that kind of brings them all together. And we can do speckles in any other color that you want, any color we use. We could do something green. If we do green, I definitely want to make sure I water my brush down really well. And also that I stay on these, on the outside part until I'm certain that I really like the way these speckles are working. And I did like the way they worked. We can do like purple. I mean, you can do any color you want, but just make sure that you get it watery, kind of water it down. You don't want it to be a nice, super thick speckle. So that's my speckle experiment area right up there. I don't want a lot of purple speckles on my pears. So I'm starting up in that corner. What have we not done? Maybe just for good measure, we'll add some blue. I know everyone doesn't love the speckles the way I do. So if you like yours without speckles, that's absolutely just as beautiful, I think. Because what makes it beautiful is it came from your hand, your imagination. You made choices that I didn't make, and that's what makes yours different than mine. And what makes mine different than yours. No one's art's ever going to be exactly the same. I feel sometimes like we all have our own little art fingerprint, if you think about it that way. We all have the things that make our art recognizable as ours. And those often aren't things that someone can copy. It's just the way things work out when we paint them. All right, so now we can remove our little raincoats. They did their job beautifully. So let's get that one and that one. And our little pears are done. So I'm going to go ahead and sign mine. Even though my speckles are still wet, I'm still going to sign it. There we go. So there's our little pears. I hope you enjoyed them. I do like the way the leaves turned out. That is so cute. So enjoy. You can experiment with making pears absolutely any way you want. Maybe you want to try one that is pink or purple or aqua. Just do it. Try it. You're the artist, and this is a time for you to work on things that are going through your brain. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope to see you next time.